Change of location again today. I've escaped dreary, cold Melbourne up to the tropics for some warmth and to recharge a little bit before our fundraising round opens this week. A few days away has helped me step back and reflect on a few things. And one of those things I was thinking about was the whole cloud migration. And, looking back on it now, I think the whole cloud migration was a mistake. And I know that sounds like heresy because that isn't something that seems to be up for debate anymore. In fact, I've been told that the cloud argument was settled a decade ago and all of us have just been catching up. Migrating to the cloud, we were told, was just common sense because, the cloud was much cheaper, more reliable, and way safer, right? Right? Well, but if you're the kind of person who says, hang on, cheaper, more reliable, and safer, what on earth are you talking about? So in this video, I wanted to reopen this discussion because I believe the cloud that we have today is very different to the type of cloud that we were promised. I'm not saying cloud isn't good technology. Of course it's good technology. It's extraordinary. But the question is, it's good for whom? And that's because the economics of cloud was good for two groups of people and pretty average for everybody else. For a start, venture capital loves a cloud. That's because they can turn a lumpy, one-off license revenue into a smooth, predictable recurring revenue, and recurring revenues is what big multiples are built on. And of course, big tech loved it because they got to turn your fixed, predictable capital expenditure into a monthly variable cost, which they could keep charging you forever. Both of those are legitimate business models. And I'm not just being cynical for the sake of it. I'm just saying it's actually not a good business model for employees, business owners, or customers. So it's a different question, and it turns out there's a very different answer depending on who you are. So my answer to whether the cloud was a mistake is a definitive yes and no. And look, the cloud was both the right thing to do and a terrible mistake, and both things can be true at the same time, and here's why. Remember what the data center actually was? The clue's in the name, right? It was about data, storage, backup, replication, disaster recovery. And remember, I know a little bit about disaster recovery because I started my career by crashing a mainframe. And let me tell you that flying tapes around the country is not a great disaster recovery plan. But then, of course, SaaS arrived and then AI arrived. And then somehow the data center became something else. It became about compute. Then it became token factories. It became critical infrastructure. Man, we need to build these things everywhere, in cities, in space, even under the ocean. And we were told all along by big tech that data centers are the way of the future. But hold on, the economics that made perfect sense for storing data through economies of scale does not make as much sense for compute. The only reason why it makes sense is that big tech can stop you from having the ability to own your software, and you have to rent it from them forever. So we signed up for one thing and we end up being billed for another. And that sounds a lot like bait and switch to me. So let me give the cloud its due where it earned it. In 1999, Mark Benioff creates Salesforce.com, a company with a logo that has the word software in a big red circle with a line through it. No software. It was a genuinely radical idea. Because before that, buying a CRM meant buying a CRM software and a server and a database license and having 18 months of consultants. And every time you did a version upgrade, it'd break all of your customizations. So the software was maybe 20% of the cost. All of the rest of the cost was the apparatus around it. So Salesforce turned all that complexity into one website with a very simple pricing model. And look, their CRM was actually much better. It was faster to deploy, cheaper to start, and it was someone else's problem to patch. And for a lot of companies back then who had sales reps out on the road, that was a great idea. So the cloud won because it deserved to win. And for that type of problem, shared data, transactional, low compute, access from anywhere, that's a perfect use case for the cloud. But 26 years later, the model has become like crack cocaine for big tech. They knew that once they had you, it was going to be very hard for you to leave. And trust me, if you ever want to have a very short meeting with a VC, tell them that you'd like your customers to be able to buy their software outright and not be dependent on you if they want. It's usually an automatic disqualification. Saying that you should build solutions that customers want instead of what investors like is a bit like saying the earth revolves around the sun, not the other way around, which, by the way, actually turned out to be the right model after all. And that's because since the SaaS model has arrived, the bill has only ever gone up. It's per seat, per API, per call, per token, per gigabyte. You almost have no control over the output that you're paying for. And the only people who know exactly how much you're going to pay is the vendor. But then, of course, there's the lock-in. It's really cheap to move your data in and really expensive to move it out. And that's by design. They make it hard for you to leave because you fired all the people that you know how to run and configure servers and support your application. So every year you stay, the harder it gets to leave. But third, security. Your data sits in a shared environment, which means that a configuration error made by somebody you've never met can turn off your application. And let me tell you, being here in Australia, I've been on the receiving end of more than a few global software rollouts that get rolled out here first. In some sense, we're the guinea pigs because we're a small market and the problems get identified here before the Europeans or Americans have even had their breakfast. So for me, the best model is a hybrid approach. Keep data for data and keep compute local. The cloud is genuinely excellent for being a data center, the original job, durable storage, replication access, geographies, all that, disaster recovery. But it should never have gone down the road of compute, especially with AI inference, because every token you send into someone else's GPU is three things. It's a variable cost you can't control, it's proprietary data given to some other party, and it's a model they can change without your control. Compute belongs where the decision gets made, on-premise, deterministic, fixed cost, auditable, and not that the cloud is bad, but because the workload has changed and the architecture didn't follow. So yes, the cloud was a mistake. It wasn't 26 years ago, but it is today. And the mistake was moving or allowing big tech to make us dependent on their technology to run our applications. I mean, for example, imagine the outrage if the government suddenly said that nobody can own their house or their car. All assets would be owned by the state or a handful of selected companies. There would be blood in the street. But that's exactly what we've signed up to with big tech, and it just blows my mind. I'm Dr. Errol Brandt, the founder of Kiraa. If you enjoy my content, please like and subscribe. If you'd like to be involved, jump on our website and sign up for our newsletter. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and leave your thoughts in the comments below. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.